Hello everyone, welcome to my 1cc commentary and guide on how to get a clear of Radiant Silvergun. All in all, it took me about 25 hours worth of grinding across 2 different platforms to get this 1cc. According to some people though, that is a pretty rapid clear, so I'm happy to hear that. Coming into it, I underestimated the difficulty of this game, as I often do with many games, where I thought, well, I've played treasure shmups before, I've played treasure games before, and while they are challenging, they typically aren't all that hard, and with a few days worth of grinding, I should be able to get the clear. No, not in the case with Radiant Silvergun. This game is definitely pretty damn challenging, and it took, like I said, 25 hours worth of really concentrated grinding and a surprising amount of study to figure out how to get this clear in an efficient manner. So I'm hopefully going to save you a lot of time doing that if you're interested in getting the clear. So let's begin by talking about this game's leveling and chaining system, because this is the backbone of how you're going to formulate your strategy and get the clear. So the way this works is this game has a chaining system, and for the purpose of this route, all you need to know is that means kill red enemies, but not the other enemy types except when you're doing secret chains, and we'll talk about secret chains a little bit later. But with these first 2 stages, if you want to get the clear, it is absolutely essential that you get their red chains correct. And so coming into this here, the big challenge is you're gonna go around and you're trying to avoid killing other enemy colors. So here, this careful shot, hit the red, hit the red, hit the red, blast, and then slice. While you're doing that too, there's 2 things you want to focus on leveling up, because the way this game's leveling system works is you have 3 different weapon types: the Vulcan shot, the spread shot, and the homing shot. And of the 3, we're basically going to be focusing on the spread shot and the straight shot Vulcan shot. We're not going to be worrying too much about the homing. This differs from other people who were watching me when I was playing. They're saying, bro, you got to be leveling up your homing more. The problem is that if you're doing a really strict sort of min-max style of route, which I'm doing here, it's more important to take every available chance to level up your straight shot and your spread shot, especially your straight shot, rather than leveling up your homing shot, which in terms of survival only has a few really critical times it needs to be used, and it typically doesn't need to be all that powerful, except this one pattern at the very end where basically you have to time out the pattern because you're too underpowered, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The thing to keep in mind here is follow the chain that I show you here in this route on stage 1 and 2, because they're both very easy to pull off but also consistent. And in order for this run to have legs, in order for it to work basically, unless you're just a top tier dodging expert, you really do need to level up and chain these first 2 stages pretty much perfectly. And so when people are watching me play, I know some people are a little bit confused because I'd have so many resets in the first 2 stages. It looked like, man, Mark is kind of a scrubby player. He can't get past the first 2 stages. It wasn't that I couldn't get past the first 2 stages, is that you needed to nail the first 2 stages in order for the run to be viable, which isn't all that uncommon with shmups. But the difference is that usually when it comes to ranking systems like a Garega or like Dodonpachi DOJ, what you actually want to do is sort of underplay the first 2 stages sometimes. It depends on how the game works and how the routing in the game works, but typically the first few stages, maxing them out for score doesn't really matter all that much, because that usually increases your rank and that becomes a problem. Except in Radiant Silvergun, it's the reverse, where maxing out those early stages and chaining them is actually going to really help you survival-wise later on, which is kind of a cool concept. I think it works really well for a home console release, but I don't think it's as conducive to the arcade format, and that's why I don't think we see this system really appear in many other arcade shmups, because the whole idea of an arcade shmup is to get you off that cabinet fast, especially if you're a good player. Like DOJ infamously just takes away all your lives, the white label version anyway, after the first loop, just because they want to get those second loop players off that cabinet as fast as possible because they're eating away in their revenue. That logic doesn't really apply for console shmups, and so when you have a console shmup like Radiant Silvergun, you can be more generous towards the player and actually reward them for playing for score earlier on in terms of survival. And so what you want to do here is that this is probably the weakest part of my route, and if you're going for the 1cc, this is part of the route you probably don't want to copy, because what you're seeing here is that I am not chaining this 3rd stage or this sub stage. You know how other stages work, they have big stages and then sub stages, but Normally, I'd say you would want to chain that stage. The problem was I was getting stubborn and I didn't want to go back and constantly relearn the chaining. And I was figuring, okay, I can pull this off without chaining this stage. But it makes the rest of the game much stricter and much harder. And you actually lose out on an extend, which is a pretty big deal, unless you get really solid chaining later on. And so I would say, don't be like me with this stage. I would go through and watch Gunner STG's run of this game, where he does a really great stage 3 chain. And that's what I'd recommend doing rather than doing the way I did it, because the rest of this game I'm going to be a little bit less powered than he is, and I'm also going to have one less extend than he does because I can't ever quite hit the 5-0 extend. So the way it works is this game gives you 2 extends, but it is really stingy with that last extend. If you're playing for survival, you really do need to chain and play for score to get the last extend, which doesn't really come up with too many shmups. Usually shmups, at least cave ones, they'll give you that second extend if you hang in there long enough. Not so much with Radiant Silvergun. You actually do need to chain and score. This, I actually kind of pulled off the chain here, so I better introduce the secret chains, because this is an example where secret chains matter, and there's a few other places in the game where secret chains matter. So the way it works is typically the idea, like I said earlier, is kill red enemies, chain the red enemies. Except in the cases where there are secret chains and not a lot of red enemies. And the secret chain is you kill the 3 colors, but in a specific order. So you kill them, I believe it's red, blue, yellow. I think that is the order. And then after that you chain yellows, so that is the order. So that's the secret chain. And I'll point out when you get them. This was the first secret chain that you do in that opening section. You kill all the reds, you kill 1 blue, you leave the rest alive, and then you take out the yellows with your sword charge, and then at the end there, try and chain the yellows. I don't really chain this stage all that well, and you're not going to see me doing too much chaining from this point on, though there are some strategic ones. This rotating boss here is going to be a real hurdle for you early on. This is going to be a boss you're going to need to practice, and my advice with it is routing out your sword charges, because the way it works is it has those sort of homing shots, then you actually have cover you can get behind. Be sure to memorize those cover locations because they're going to become important later on. And then what you want to do is you don't want to damage his side turrets too much, because you want to use the pink bullets that it shoots out, in case you don't know, for your sword charges. So the way the sword system works in this game, I better point this out while I can, is if you slice the pink bullets, you absorb them, and then they go towards your sword slash, which is kind of like the bomb function of this game, because this game doesn't have a bomb. I think this is one of the cleverest aspects of Radiant Silvergun, by the way, is how the sword system works. It's excellent, really ingenious game design, and probably an idea I'm going to steal from my own shmup, where I was thinking of how do I get rid of bombs but make something sort of bomb equivalent that's fun. You're probably going to see me doing Radiant Silvergun style sword slashes and stuff like that, because I think it's a really cool system. So anyway, the way this system works again here, or this stage works again, is kill the reds. You're going to be using the back Vulcan. I think there's a more optimal chain you can do there, but another thing that I better point out right now is when you're wanting to do a crap load of damage, there's a really good combo that you can do, which is you use your spread shot, and then you come up to it and you slice it with the sword, because the way the spread shot works is even when you're not firing, it has this sort of lingering effect, and so you can actually combine your spread shot and your sword slashes together to do a crap load of damage extremely quickly. You'll see me doing here is I'm doing a lot of shooting. That's because I want to level up my straight shot as much as possible, and that's something to keep in mind as you're routing out, is if you can get a chance to kill something or shoot something with your straight shot and it makes sense, go ahead and do that, because the more you use your weapon, it's like Final Fantasy II, the more you use the weapon, the stronger it becomes. And another thing that you want to keep in mind with these early stages is that you're basically gonna want to get perfect boss destructions on all of them, except the spinning turret one. That one's a pain in the ass, so don't worry about that one. But this one, absolutely you need to. And it's kind of intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of this boss fight, getting the 100% destruction isn't too bad. The key is actually paying attention to your sword slashes, because this boss gives you an insane amount of sword bullets. I guess I'll call them the pink sword bullets. And the idea is you're going to need to slash them, but you don't want to just slash, 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 and then use it, slash, 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 use it. You want to slash, slash, charge it up, and then strategically use it when you need it. Sometimes you'll actually need to dodge around the pink bullets, and that's when you know your sword routing is getting good, is when you start to realize, Oh, okay, here I'm doing that destruction thing I was talking about, where you're hitting him with the spread and slicing him with the sword. That puts in a lot of damage extremely quickly. And so there you go. That boss is actually a lot of fun. One of my favorite bosses in the game once you get the hang of him. Also, the scrolling effect in the background is a nice touch. After playing Radiant Silvergun, I kind of looked at a lot of other shmups out there, and I thought, you guys need to step up your background game. Because I would say the background animations in Radiant Silvergun are probably one of the best in the genre. I think they're actually better than Ikaruga's. Maybe that's just because I'm partial to the visual design of Radiant Silvergun over Ikaruga, but just as we go through this run here, pay attention to how the backgrounds are scrolling and interacting. They look fantastic. Here's a really important secret chain, and I miss it. So what you want to do is you kill the opening section of the reds there. You have to clip one with a sword, and then coming up into there, you saw I missed it, which is unfortunate because that can give you a real power boost, and it really makes the 1cc easier. So some of the runs I hit it, some of the runs I don't, but it's a pretty tricky shot where you kill that section of red, and then you need to just very precisely hit the blue with one little baby Vulcan shot, and then the yellow right next to it with one baby Vulcan shot. And it's a very quick, tight chain where you go bam, bam, but you can't overshoot, because if you overshoot, you break your chain. And so I was just a little bit off and accidentally hit the yellow before the blue. The order really matters with the secret chains. Had I been able to do that, though, I would have gotten a crap load of points, because then you cash out the rest of the yellows. Again, here's another really good example of using that sword spread slash technique. And I'll do it again here. Oh, no. So with this boss here, it's all about getting the destruction of those right and left arms first. And when it does this sort of spinning blast attack here, for whatever reason, the left side is safer than the right. If you try and, at least in my experience, if you try and dodge it on the right, it is way harder than if you dodge it on the left side. So just make that a habit of when he does that straight blast attack. One, you're not getting hit in the face by it. And two, you're dodging it on the left side rather than the right side. Here using the spread shot, I'm sitting on top of the sword. A really nicely placed sword there. We're trying to take out the arm pieces here. So I took out the left arm piece, now I'm going to take out the right. Another bit of advice that I want to give with the sword, being really good with your sword matters a lot in this game when you're going for the clear. Let me tell you that. Another thing too is you need to kind of actually practice your sword swings. Funnily enough, that was very close. Because if there's like a timing to the way you swing your sword, because if you hold the button, you'll get a full 360 motion like that. If you kind of just slash the button, you'll get like a half motion, like a Link to the Past style sword swing. And at first you would think doing the quick little slices seems better, but I got in the habit of using that full 360 degree spin slash and just doing that over and over, because that tends to give you a lot more coverage, especially later on. Okay, a very important secret chain here. Red, blue, yellow, red, blue, yellow, yellow. Now we're taking out the yellows. Yellow, yellow, dodge up. Yellow, yellow. That is actually a pretty tough chain. It looks simple when you watch it back, but the hard part about it is getting your Vulcan to shoot. So if you hold that Vulcan for just even a second or half a second, you'll get the full-on blast like you see here. But if you just lightly, quickly tap it, you'll get those little baby shots, and those are actually really important for getting those chains. This boss fight here. So what you want to do is, when you're fighting the previous boss, this is when boss routing really comes into play. You actually want to charge up your sword and kill him with a charged up sword. The reason why is because when this boss does that sort of a laser attack that you saw before, you want to have a sword activated there during that laser attack, just in case you get kind of cornered, and just to make the risk go down and you have a lot more safety. And also it just takes the boss out faster, which is really important, because the later part of this run, if you don't kill that boss quickly, is pretty damn challenging. And so a lot of the boss fights of this game come to sort of this interesting balance where you want to get high destruction rates so you can charge up your shot powers and everything more. But at the same time, a lot of those bosses, if you let them go on too long, their phases become much more risky and dangerous. And the way my route works, I didn't explain this before, is because this game is so stingy with the extends and so brutal at the end, you basically need to no miss the whole game up to the last stage. You can maybe take one death and accept that, but after that, oh, this laser attack is awful, and it will get you guaranteed the first time you play it. No doubt about it, it will definitely get you. The strategy with it is you need to go way up into the corners and force him to turn, because if you try and dodge it from below, your ship speed just isn't fast enough, and that laser comes out crazy fast and has massive coverage. Here's a fun little trick that I discovered. So if you come up to the sides and shoot it with the spread, it'll misdirect them. So you can go under them, shoot them, come up, hit them with the spread, misdirect them. Some of the boss fights and strategies that I use require just a good amount of solid dodging skills, because I think there's probably better routes as far as safety if you get, you know, earlier chains and you have a nice big fat laser coming into these fights. You can take them out quicker. I'm probably running like the bare minimum levels you can do without making the game a complete nightmare. And so keep that in mind. If you're really struggling with the later stages in this sort of middle section with the power level that I show, you might need to spend time improving my chaining routes, because some of this really just requires some pretty OP dodging skills. The thing about Radiant Silvergun, though, that is sort of nice compared to cave games, at least for survival, is that most of the boss fights are pretty static. They'll act the same way. The routes will often be predictable. This dodge right there, that'll get you the first time, because you can't really see that bullet. It kind of sneaks in underneath. What you need to do is just shoot him and just dodge as if it'll appear, because you can't really see it. You just have to assume it's going to show up. This game has a few moments like that with the bullets and the level design, where you kind of just need to know what's going to happen, otherwise you're going to get clipped. And that's another reason why I would say, if you want to get the 1cc of this game, I'm sure people are going to ask this because it is a really good question. Which version of the game do you use? Like, how do you practice this game? I would say you kind of at least need the 360 port, and all on the 360, not on the Xbox One, because the Xbox One version is pretty damn laggy. And the 360 port is more challenging because it has one more frame of input lag and it doesn't have any slowdown than the Saturn version. The thing about the 360 port, though, is it has a really good stage select function and training function, or fairly good. I mean, it could be improved, but for the most part, it's fairly good. And the Saturn port does not. And so you're gonna really, especially for the later stuff, you're gonna really want... Oh yeah, coming to this boss fight, by the way, make sure you have a sword charged up, because this pattern here is really challenging to dodge, and the way to sort of get around that is just to have a sword. Now, if you're really cool, what you'll do is you'll go ahead and you'll destroy all the pieces of this dragon boss and charge up. You'll get a ton of points for doing that, and you'll really charge up all your weapons a lot. The problem, and you'll get a good amount of points. The problem is that this fight is really challenging the later on it goes, and it also gets kind of a little bit less predictable and scary, and you can get some pretty wicked chain deaths. So with my routing decisions, I decided, let's just take that thing out ASAP rather than letting it go on for a long time and trying to go for the points and everything. So that's another routing decision that I personally made that you may deviate from. Instead of taking that thing out and getting a low destruction, maybe take it, try and get a high destruction. Though I will warn you, you'll probably have less consistency in your routing as far as survival, because that's a tricky boss fight. Make sure you have your sword charged here coming into this boss. This is one of the hardest bosses in the game, I would say, and it's mostly because of this opening pattern here. This opening pattern here is ridiculous, and you can very quickly rack up a ton of deaths on it. The reason why this opening pattern here is stupid and I don't like it is, one, the visibility of these bullets is not that good. I think Treasure made a little bit of a mistake here with the visual design of these bullets. They blend into the background a little bit too much, for my opinion. But the big problem with these bullets, and the reason why this section is so hard, is that they bounce off the walls, and that's tough. You know, that's not that uncommon in shmups, that you have, like, Hibachi has a pattern like that in Donpachi, where the bullets bounce off the walls a little bit. The difference is when those things bounce off the walls in Silvergun, they speed up. They get a little speed bonus as they come off the wall, which doesn't make sense in physics, or maybe it does, I don't know. But it definitely isn't typical for shmup patterns, and so you have to, basically my advice on that pattern is stay away from those bullets as much as you can, and try to stay a little bit more towards the center, even though the center looks scarier, because those walls are a death trap, because those bullets will bounce off those walls. You don't know what angle the bullet's going to come off, and you don't know what speed, because they kind of speed up as they come off the wall. Here, remember before I was talking about practicing your sword swings and practicing your 360 sword swings? This is a perfect example of why you need to do that, because this section here is going to throw a ton of bullets at you, and you don't want to concentrate on those pink bullets. Instead, what you want to do is just practice through muscle memory that spinning 360 sword. There's a timing element to it where you want it to be as fast as possible, but still getting the full range of motion. So it's like, you know, perfect timing on the sword swings where you get almost unbeatable coverage. I mean, if a bullet's real sneaky, you can get through it, but it's pretty much unbeatable coverage you'll see there. And you'll notice I'm also using my spread shot for actually two different reasons. There's this sort of little meta strategy in here that isn't obvious. One is, of course, to damage the sides, but the bigger reason, because you notice a lot of times the bullets aren't hitting anything, is to change the background to be blue rather than to be this sort of weird, what is it, yellowish, I don't know, I'm not that good with colors, but the blandish sort of color of the background. Bullets, at least those spinning sickle bullets, again, kind of blend into it. And so by having those spread bombs explode and have the blue underneath, you can actually see the bullets better. And so that was one of the main reasons why I was doing that, was one, to give you coverage, of course, as you're swinging your sword, and two, for more bullet visibility on those red bullets, because the blue and red are a strong contrast rather than the red sort of blending into the yellowish grayish. Here, this opening section here looks hard, but once you know the routing, it's actually super easy. You just stick to the right, kill the reds, kill these, and then come over and just take these out. If you try and interact with the rest of the stage, it's actually a really tough opening section there, but when you learn that you just hang out in the top right corner there, it's actually really easy. This section here, if you were really cool and you're really good at chaining, what you'd do is you'd blow these things up without hitting those blue turrets, right? So you see those blue turrets. If you're able to chain that without hitting those blue turrets, you'll make lots of points, but I didn't have the energy to really memorize that routing all that well, so that didn't turn out well. This is another choke point in the run, this mid-boss. This mid-boss, I swear, is almost harder than the boss, and there are more strategies to defeating it, but here's the strategy that I use that's okay-ish. I think it could be improved upon, to be honest. But the way I do it here is you want to misdirect these bombs that it throws, this sort of bomb that explodes and sends out these bullets. And of course, the further out it goes, the wider it becomes. So you kind of want to get it from side to side. You go left to right. But you'll see sometimes, like here, you get cornered. I'm not doing a whole lot of damage because I'm moving left to right to such strong angles. So there are, I'm sure, better routes to take that thing out. But if you want a real safe way to do it, besides a few sticky moments there, left to right, I have a really good survival strategy on this guy, so I'll share that. Always attack him with the spread shot off center like this. The reason for it is if you move off center, he'll do that rolling spin towards you. And when he does the rolling spin, he conveniently drops a lot of bomb bullets or sword bullets. So you'll just want to do that. Don't attack him from underneath and try and be a gangsta and try and dodge everything, because he'll start hitting you with really wicked quick patterns and you'll start doing obnoxious crap like this. But if you can get him in that nice little loop, I didn't quite pull it off in this run, but if you get them in this really nice loop, you can actually pretty much fight and defeat the boss without ever having to dodge all that much, just going left to right, and then making him drop the bullets. Here's a place where you do need your homing, and again, just practicing that sword swing as you hold the button. Very, very important, because you want to, once you absorb those bullets, you just hit that thing with a sword and it's dead. But in the meantime, just use your homing and run around, run away from it. Don't try and shoot it with your Vulcan or your spread. You're going to get yourself in weird positions, because that thing darts around randomly and it'll just ram into you. Or it'll hit you with a bullet really, really fast. The thing about Radiant Silvergun is interesting is that your ship is very nice to control for like micro situations, but your ship is a slow boy. And so if you get into a sort of a macro dodging battle with that thing, you're going to die. So that's why you want to just run away from it. There's a very particular way you're supposed to chain this with secret chains and all that. I tried to learn it, but again, had I gotten stuck and not gotten this clear within the next day or two, I would have changed my routing and gone back and learned how to chain stage 3. And then I also would have learned how to chain that little section there, because it's all about like these micro precise things. Okay, here, so this section here with my route is much more challenging than with Gunner's route, because Gunner has better chaining. And so his weapon is much more powered up in this boss fight. And so he just cruises through this section here because he kills it much faster. But me, this is where your dodging, see, this is where my route's really challenging, because it pushes your dodging skills a lot more, because you basically need to no-miss this boss fight, and that can be pretty challenging. This is a really challenging boss fight. Last boss is also challenging too. So the difficulty spike at the end of my run is pretty high. That's why having the 360 port is really useful, because you can really practice this last stage, and I did that for hours. I would just sit for hours and just practice this stage over and over and over and over and over again, so that I got it really good. I think I got a really good run here. I may have taken a death somewhere along the way, but this boss fight is the big choke point here, and I'll try and give you my advice for how to survive it. First of all, again, that strategy, except you're using the straight laser here, but you need to learn how to swing your sword that full 360 motion while shooting, and do it sort of unconsciously. So you're not thinking swing sword, swing sword. You just have this rhythm where you're swinging it, and it makes a very tight radius around you that bullets have a real tough time getting through. And then with this pattern here, what you want to do is you want to use your homing laser, which I don't think I've only used a few times before. And the reason for it is it was just designed to use that here. And the second time around, you'll actually get a lot of slowdown, which is really nice. The first time through, you don't get a lot of slowdown, unfortunately. So that's one of the tougher dodges, is actually the first session through here. And then here, of course, swinging the sword, you got to go kind of up and down, up and down. You're focusing on those blue bullets. You're supposed to be just saving up your sword for when these walls come in swinging. So you're swinging your sword, you're picking up those pink bullets. When you get the trails on the side here, just stay in the center. Don't worry about the things on the side, and just shoot the crap out of the center. This is where you get a lot of damage in, and you get some weapon bonuses as well. Probably for scoring and stuff that isn't good strategy, but for my survival route, it works pretty well. Here, the trick is you get in this little center column here, and you use your back Vulcan, but you want to make sure you're killing the things spawning in the front, because if you don't kill those things really quickly, they're going to destroy you. They're actually one of the harder parts of the fight, are those ships that come and spawn in, because they're really fast, and you actually can't sword swing them all that effectively. You need to have like laser precise sword swings to hit them while they're coming in. So the better way, like you see here, is just to kill them as they spawn. This bit's a little bit challenging because you start spinning, and this is where the game gets real silly with the background and gameplay coming together, where now you're spinning and the whole screen is spinning. And a lot of shmups, this wouldn't be possible to really do, because you wouldn't be able to attack your enemies, you know, like in a cave shmup or something. Maybe in Ketsu you could probably do it because of the lock system, but like in Dononpachi, doing a section like this would be impossible, because 80% of the time you wouldn't be able to hit anything. But because Radiant Silvergun has this really robust weapon system, this allows Treasure to introduce a spinning section like this, which is really, really clever game design. And this is what makes Treasure such great game designers, not just for shmups, but for everything, is they think everything through and they piece everything together, so they come up with ways to integrate the way the weapon system works with the level design. It's a masterclass in how to make a shmup, in my opinion, at least if you're doing unique stuff. Saving that sword swing here, you want to use the spread shot. This is why you want to be leveling up your spread shot. It's mostly for this fight, because if you have a weak spread shot, this fight's going to go on for a long time, because you do need to use that spread shot. And then here, blasting it with a Vulcan, getting nice and close. I don't know if this game has strong point blanks or not. I never could deduce that. I'm sure the comment section knows. So I would act as though it does, though, so I'd fire. This bit here is kind of tricky. What you want to do is you want to sort of lead them to... That's where I got hit. See, I tried to sword swing him and it just didn't work. Usually I don't have to dodge that last pattern there because I kill him beforehand, but this fight took a little bit more, so literally one pattern away from no missing it. Looking back, I should have just done a straight shot, but I didn't really have that fully routed out. I remember being pretty frustrated, pretty relieved though, because I got through the whole fight without dying, and chain deaths in that fight are very common. Usually if you take one death, it's just game over. That's kind of how I viewed it. So here we go, the boss fight. One extend down, but really still sitting on a really nice stockpile of extends. But the way this game works is I basically have to play 100% perfectly to get this clear, especially with the way I'm leveled up. If you watch, this is going to be one of the more drawn out boss fights probably you'll see on YouTube, because I'm way underpowered compared to a lot of other runs on YouTube. Maybe every other run on YouTube, that's a clear. This might be... People can check. This might be the most low-powered clear of Radiant Silvergun on YouTube right now. So the way you do it here is you definitely want to stay up top and hit him with your back Vulcan, because throughout the run you've noticed I have been focusing a lot on powering up the straight Vulcan, and that's what's going to do the damage. And so you'll see other people do other things, but for my routing, hitting him with that Vulcan at the start is really good. The way this works here, this pattern actually isn't too bad. It's all about timing the crosses. So you want to go nice and low, and then you sort of want to time it between phases of when it shoots those spinning discs. So it's a little bit hard to explain, but basically what you do is let one disc come, then you dodge, let it fire, then you cross, and then you do the same thing on the other side. This pattern here looks really scary, and it is, but I do have a really solid strategy. So that first section there, what you need to do, you absolutely need to save your sword swing, by the way. Do not swing your sword there. You need to charge it and then dodge the pings. But the first bit there in the center, you just dodge left. And then here, you want to start on the left side as far out as you can. And then you slowly just kind of tick, 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 tick across until about halfway through the pattern. Then hit him with the sword. And then you come to the top corner and you go down, 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 down. And the patterns are static or pretty close to static. And so between runs, they'll basically do the same thing. So you can learn a really solid setup. And I would say just copy the way I set up mine. Start in the center, tick, tick, tick left, swing, swing, swing. And then left to right, tick, 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 swing, top left corner, down, down, out, and then you're through the pattern. This pattern here is where my run gets silly because my homing shot is so low powered, I actually don't have enough power to defeat this pattern, so I have to time it out, basically. I do try to defeat it, I might. It's like, the line between me timing it out and defeating it is barely any difference, so I don't remember if I time it out or defeat it here, but the way this works is the screen rotates, and you have to learn a very specific route along with. So this isn't one where you improvise and you say, oh, I'll dodge this and dodge that. No, it's a paint by numbers. You need to know the route. And the route is here. Once we get to the next cycle, I'll show you. We're not through the next cycle yet, but it'll repeat over and over and over till you either time it out or beat it. Okay, that's the toughest dodge though. So here we go. Bottom left corner, bottom right corner, kick, shoot, bottom left corner, kick, shoot, spins. Now you need to be behind him. If you're in front of him, you'll get kicked. And then homing up, go far left, up through that pattern. Now pull up, and then you kind of do this funky diagonal dodge there. I'm surprised I made it through without getting hit. I mean, that's what I'm going for, but that's that last bit there where you have to do that funky diagonal pattern, that's the hardest. This is really important. You need to get that sword swing early. Then you need to point blank the crap out of him here. You need to constantly be damaging him, because if you get to the second phase of this pattern, it's over. So you actually, even though it's scary, you need to be underneath him and hitting him during this phase here. Otherwise, you get to the death pattern. And if you get to the death pattern, clearing it is going to be a nightmare. So you need to just put as much damage on as possible. And then here comes those bullets, sword swing. This is critical. If you miss this sword swing, run is over. So you have to hit those bullets. Then you have to get... Oh, I didn't explain this earlier in the run. I should have. I guess shout outs for people who made it this far. You get some good info. If you swing right on top of bosses, it does more damage than if you do it like from way far away. So if you stand right on top of them and swing, it does more damage. And that's really critical in this fight. So you need to get that. And then you need to be real close when you swing your sword to do enough damage to avoid the second phase, which is the death phase, which I was able to do. And now here we go. This is just the crystal dodge. This is where you either beat the game or don't. And I knew I had to no miss this in order to beat it, because the chain deaths in this section are brutal, especially on the Saturn, because the Saturn will have like weird random slowdown in this section, which can be nice at times, but at times it can be awful too, because you can actually get tripped up by the slowdown. So I'm not sure if this phase is harder on 360 or Saturn, to be honest. There's pros and cons to both. I nailed it though. My advice on dodging that is just pay attention to where you're going next. I've talked about a little bit more in my where to look video, but this is a perfect example of that. Is you're not thinking about that laser that's coming down on you. You're not thinking about the diamonds that you're next to. What you're thinking about is what's ahead, and you have to think like 3 seconds ahead of what's happening at all times, and you have to dodge based on that. So you're not actually sitting and looking at your ship during that pattern. You're looking higher up where the gaps are forming, and this is where just solid shmup skills become kind of a requirement. Is you need to be able to navigate your ship around without looking at it all that much, because you have to be looking at where the gaps are going to appear. So if you're wondering how people hit dodges like that, that's how they do it. This dodge here isn't actually all that bad, to be honest. You just need to be ballsy. So you just want to go around the screen, and then you need to be constantly searching for gaps. and then navigate your ship through the gaps. The nice thing is that Radiant Silvergun has a nice, gentle movement speed to your ship, so micro dodges like that aren't too hard. This bit here is actually more challenging of a section because I'm going to have to do some better. I didn't do the routing all that great. My routing is basically just kind of stick underneath that corner of left diagonal underneath him and then react as things appear. That workaround there was really scary because I didn't know if I had enough speed to get around it. But the alternative was such a tight micro dodge that I didn't. So these slides, these are really important to dodge. The way you do it is you want to be in the bottom left corner and you want to just go left to right, left to right, left to right. If I hadn't hit those dodges, it might have been a game over. This pattern here is the death pattern. For people who've been watching my runs, I had 2 runs die on that last death pattern there. It's just a really, really tight dodge. And it's just kind of treasures one last FU to stop you from getting the 1cc. Once I got to that last pattern though, and I had that many resources, I could have just let go of the controller because you can respawn around it. So that was really nice. I didn't have to dodge the last pattern, which I wasn't able to do, but I almost did, and that was pretty impressive. And so that is my 1cc of Radiant Silvergun. Not an easy 1cc, but an absolutely fun and addictive one. And one that I was frustrated with because I made it to the last of the game and I died twice, but not frustrated with because it is a really fun 1cc. It is a lot of fun to play. It is a lot of fun to practice. It's very unique. You're not going to play another game like Radiant Silvergun. They just don't exist. The closest you're going to get is probably Zero Ranger, but even then, the flavors are just a little bit different. The treasure, the power of treasure is very unique, and it's definitely my favorite treasure shmup as of right now. I'm going to be covering Ikaruga next on the channel in the treasure series, and I know a lot of people love Ikaruga. I'm most likely though, going to prefer Silvergun a lot more. Silvergun has just so many elements that I like that Ikaruga doesn't have, like the multi-weapon system. I love that. I love the freaking sword. The sword's awesome. The way that the level design works in Silvergun is really fun too. Brutal, but also fair. You know, it's like tough but fair, like your dad. So I couldn't recommend this game enough. And if you're going for the 1cc and you're asking for advice, I would say if you want to do it the most effective way possible, you're gonna need 2 versions of the game. So you're gonna need the 360 port to practice on because of the stage select and everything like that. And then you're gonna probably want to run it on the Saturn port because the Saturn port has less input lag and it also has more slowdown in certain sections, which is much kinder. But I would say the difference isn't massive. So if you just have the 360 port, you can do it just on the 360. Just make sure you're playing on the actual 360, not the Xbox One, because the Xbox One adds extra lag and it's just too much lag in my opinion, especially that last diamond pattern. Trying to dodge that with all that lag, that would be a nightmare. So yes, thanks so much, and shout outs to all the patrons. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And thanks for everyone for supporting the channel. Channel's doing really great lately, and that makes me happy. Adios, everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons: 172 PCT Water, Adam Pearson, Ukshay Wadker, Dingo, Andy Cap, Another Joe, Anthony A, Aaron Solis, Ben, Borgie22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Chris Yuzefovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Choreo, CRC Error, Danielle Savage, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, Eric H, Frank Carter, Full Set, Roger Schmupper, Geriatric, Don Maku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kikoman 589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Maz, Minung, Mechalin, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Raul, Real Skeen, Sketchy Raccoon, SLW, The Boot Rex, The Real Ikuzo, TRM, Sugumo, Yishi, Plasmo, and Utsukaya. Thanks for watching.